So my name is Tina Weishaus. I'm the chairperson of Sustainable Highland Park. Back in May 2017, we won a grant from Sustainable Jersey, $10,000 to voluntarily reduce plastic bag usage in town. Part of that grant was to look at ordinances that were happening around the country and around the world, and some over the course of the year that actually got passed in New Jersey, to look at them and to make a decision about whether that was right for Highland Park. In the course of the year that our outreach occurred, our education and outreach, the issue of microplastics, the degradation of plastic bags and other plastic items like plastic bottles and packaging going into our waterways, our rivers, and our oceans, and degrading by sunlight into these tiny micro beads of plastic kind of hit the mainstream press, and it has become a very big issue. It was kind of unexpected, so that by the time we got to the end of the grant, there were a number of towns on the shore in Jersey City and Hoboken that had already passed ordinances. They passed bans and they passed fees, and Hoboken passed a ban and a fee. Our outreach involved showing movies, speaking to people at street fairs, going into the schools, having the science teachers show the movie, putting it on Highland Park TV so that it was accessible to view on the weekends at more convenient times for people, and also spending more than 50% of the grant on free giveaway reusable bags that we were encouraging people to take, not just to take from us, but to take into the store, to move from the closet or the back seat of the car or the trunk and actually go and use it. We knew that many people had lots of reusable bags. What we were trying to do was change behavior. And that's a very difficult thing to do. And what we found was in our biggest distributor, Stop and Shop, the year before we did the grant, they gave out 1.3 million plastic bags, and people should realize that our Stop and Shop is a very small store. After we did our year's grant, it was reduced by 200,000 plastic bags. So they then, the year that we did the education, they gave out 1.1 million bags. We were pleased but not satisfied. And even though we had given out thousands of reusable bags and spoken to a lot of people, we did a pre-survey and a post-survey. We found in town that there was a lot of support for an ordinance, either a ban or some kind of unspecified ordinance. So that's what we did at the end of the year, after many towns along the shore, the Jersey Shore, and Hoboken and Jersey City had already passed ordinances. We began to think, what would our ordinance look like? So we drafted an ordinance. That's what we're here to talk about tonight. We feel that we want this to be an open, public, transparent process. We held a meeting 2 weeks ago. The ordinance has been posted on the borough website. We want people to read it carefully, come with worries, concerns, support, applause, whatever. And so what we decided was best for our town, what I call the best practice of a plastic bag ordinance, which is, after a period of time of ramping up, a ban on plastic bags that would go into effect 8 months after our ordinance becomes effective, and then a 10-cent fee on paper. the biggest question I think that people have had is, why do you want to charge for paper? And what we found was it's a best practice because paper has a tremendous environmental and social cost. It cuts down tremendous number of trees, which we don't know what the rate of replanting is. Trees absorb carbon dioxide, they're a carbon dioxide sink, and they reduce climate change. If you increase the amount of paper that you're using, you are increasing the use of water to make paper, chemicals that are part of the process, a tremendous amount of energy, as well as putting tremendous amount of pulp that is a byproduct of making paper into landfills, and you are using much more gasoline to transport from one part of the country to the other very heavy paper bags, much heavier than a thin plastic bag. So we didn't want to just pretend that paper bags didn't have a cost. We are trying to address the specific issue of microplastics, which have not only gotten into the marine life and killed a lot of marine life, but now it's a known fact that it's in the human food chain, it's coming out of our tap water, and there was a study recently where they looked at the gut of human beings, and it was in 8 of 10 humans' gut. So people are ingesting this plastic, and we know that BPA plastic and phthalate plastic, we know that they're enzyme, hormone disruptors. They have known and unknown impact. So here we are, we're here to talk about the ordinance. We know that change is difficult, but we are pleased to say that we really feel like we have the support of a good percentage of the town to go ahead, do the right thing, do it for ourselves as well as our children and grandchildren. And we can be a model, we can be one of the earliest towns in the state to have that ordinance. And I want to tell everybody that the state has a bill that has already come out of the Senate and Assembly committees that is called, I only know the number for the Senate, it's S277. If you go on NJ Ledge and then look for the most recent bill that was released in September, it is the same bill but bigger and bolder. It is a ban on plastic, a 10-cent fee on paper. What I didn't say in our town is that our merchants, who were very concerned about not putting any additional costs on them, will get to keep the 10 cents exclusively. At the state level, the state will take 5 cents of the 10 cents that is collected on paper and put it towards a plastic pollution fund. We are concerned, we've been working with our merchants, we don't want to put anybody out of business, and we also want people to realize that paper has costs, and the best way to answer that is to bring your own reusable bags, backpacks, shopping carts, anything you can put your items in, cartons like they do in Costco. We know that people can make this change. We're confident that they can make it, and it may feel hard to some people initially, but we have tremendous confidence that this is what our town wants.
Hi.
Board comments.
I have a question. And sorry if you already walked through this at the beginning because I came a little late, but can you kind of just walk us through what the next steps would be and how actually this would be implemented or not, who votes on it, what the next steps are?
Yeah, I did address that, but I'll try to summarize it again. What we are in a process of right now is actually something new that we've adopted in the last couple of years, growing. Ordinarily, and I'll just rehash the boring stuff just for a second. Ordinarily, an ordinance gets reviewed by a subcommittee of the council, which recommends it with changes, or does not recommend it. That ordinance may come from volunteers, it may come from our subcommittees, it may come from another council person. It's vetted by that subcommittee. It goes to a conference for a discussion as to up, down, or modification. It goes with the council as a whole, informally. and then it goes to the borough attorney for review. He may make some changes, he may say that's totally illegal, but assuming that it says go forward and he's fine-tuned it and put it in final format, it then goes to what we call first reading, which is a formal process by law, gets introduced on the record, there's a motion and a second to adopt it, but that's only the first reading. It's not final at that point. There's no public discussion at that point, although people can make comments during the general public, and the reason is very specific. It's so that it is required by law that there be discussion at a second meeting when it's on for final adoption, that the public has a chance to weigh in on it. And the other requirement is that it has to be circulated and published. What we've done here, we've started a new process that we talked about for a long time, which is when these ordinances of importance, I don't think you really care about an ordinance to bond repairs to the plumbing in the bathroom here at the Civic Center, which is very routine, but I think you care about an ordinance to ban plastic bags, to paint the trees green or something like that. We have a sense now that people want to care about that, they want to hear more about it. So on these important things, we've started conducting a lot of public hearings before we ever get to that formal process. So we're discussing it in public. HBTV will have it out on television. We're also doing a compendium of as many of the comments that are on social media that we can gather so that people see, because you may not have Twitter, but you may have Facebook, or you may not bother to look at all, like me. I don't care about any of them. But people will see what people are saying, positive and negative. And we're going to put that, it's right on the borough website. The ordinance is right on the website. Every meeting we give out more copies of it. So that's the process. And again, it will finalize if it gets to that point, which, we're having these meetings to decide. It'll get to the point of final reading. If it's adopted, it then becomes effective. The state law has a couple of different versions, but generally 20 days after its adoption, it becomes effective.
And I just want to clarify something. Social media, Facebook, I want you to understand that we don't encourage the discussion there very much because if you're expecting us to weigh in, is my point, because we cannot weigh in on Facebook discussions, social media discussions.
Right.
And the reason for that is it would be considered conducting borough business if I or any of the council people were to respond to any of the comments on Facebook. It's considered borough business. And frankly, with OPRA, Open Public Records Act, and OPMA, Open Public Meetings Act, anything that we say or do can be OPRA'd, we call it. And on Facebook, someone can take down a posting at any given time, and there's no recorded history of anything we've said. So we can't be saying things there and then have them lost in space, so to speak. I know that some people were expecting us to weigh in on some of these conversations on Facebook, but you will never see us do that because we legally can't. We can post things on Facebook, we can tell you about events coming up, we can tell you about open public meetings like this, but we can't get into a discussion on any particular issue.
When we met with Sustainable Highland Park I said, to close out the grant, let's do a post survey and find what kind of penetration did we make in the neighborhood. What did people think? How did they change their minds? Where are they today on this issue as opposed to a year ago? And that brought about the impetus for the ordinance. So as far as...
What was the result of the survey?
The result of the survey was 80% in favor of banning plastic bags.
Hold on. Okay, that wasn't what you said. You said, did people change their perspective or things like that?
Yes.
Did people?
It went from 67% to 80%.
Okay. Who did you poll? I didn't receive a full.
It was,
And the Highland Park, as also as last
It
council
was an
meeting, you don't
online-
ha- you're
it was
not
an
sending it out
online-
to all Highland Park residents.
We did, we sent it out through the Nixle system. If
Yes,
you
but
don't
as
have
we
your,
determined last time, not everybody's on the Nixle system.
well, there's a limit to
So
what
do
we
you not
can
think that
do.
there's a predisposed percentage of people that are pro this sustainable thing that were unrepresentative of the rest of Highland Park that
well,
voted on this?
let me point out that since we began the discussion, there's also been a lot of weigh-in on social media, and there's some negative comments.
Most negative.
No disagreement with that, which may be the other side. So, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. But again, as I pointed out in the beginning, we haven't even introduced this yet. We're still in the process of, which is why you're all here, at our invitation to come in and talk about it. See what you want to do. See how you feel about it. Do you want to change it? Do you want to make it look like this? Do you want to make it look like that? Now, to talk about the issue with the state, I don't disagree. What happened with ours is we went ahead, number one, because the original talk about the original bill that was on Murphy's desk since the spring was that it was going to preempt municipalities from doing it. So there was a push by some municipalities, Jersey City, Hoboken in particular, to get one adopted. And then the bill sat on the governor's desk, and there was a question, and you saw all the headlines about it, the 5 cents, we were going to have to collect it, we were going to pay it to the state, it was just for them to make money, and so on and so forth. We decided that we would get into the drafting of it, and we would take something that made a lot more sense for us, for Highland Park, for our residents, and especially for our merchants, and that's the process. So the fact that the state rushed in to put in another bill in place to make something happen on the state level, we didn't really anticipate, but on the other hand, we crafted one that we thought was more appropriate. We also thought, based upon the comments to the state bill, that this was one that was going to be more appropriate. So that's where we are. That's why we're having public meetings to talk about it.
So you're raising your hand.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Perfect, cool. So apologies, I came a little late, so maybe you went over this already. So in regards to what you said, and the fact that this is a municipality-specific one, and this isn't being done in conjunction with East Brunswick or Edison or any other nearby municipality. Did you reach out to them by any chance?
You don't make ordinances jointly.
But did you ask them?
No.
No, you didn't reach out to them.
Our municipality got a grant for $10,000, did our educational campaign, and as part of the grant, we were mandated to look at ordinances and make a decision about whether our town was going to go ahead with ordinances.
Got it.
This was not in coordination with any other town.
Cool. So, because this is a Highland Park specific one, I know you mentioned a lot of global facts, and those are all relative, valid points, but they're completely irrelevant to the point of Highland Park as a municipality. So, within our specific municipality's impact to the environment involved, how much plastic is produced in Highland Park?
How many bags do people think Stop and Shop, which has 6 aisles, how many bags do you think they give out a year?
Sorry, I didn't ask that.
No, but you did ask
You
it
asked the
because
volume,
that
Beth.
they're
You
the
did. You
biggest.
asked
No,
They're
that's
the biggest
going to be a follow-up
provider.
question. How much plastic is
Wait.
produced
So
in
I'm
Highland
gonna
Park
tell- I
specifically?
want-
All of Highland Park.
Go ahead, answer.
Produce?
Including, produced, not just plastic bags.
You don't mean produced, you mean distributed, right?
Distributed, consumed by Highland Park residents purchasing things from Highland Park things. And I'm not just talking about plastic bags. I'm talking about plastic bottles. I'm talking about everything else that's
Okay.
plastic.
We did not work on the issue of plastic bottles. We worked on the issue of plastic bags. I can tell you that the supermarket, the year before we did the education campaign, gave out 1.3 million bags over the course of the year. We were pretty shocked at that. We also learned that through our educational outreach, we reduced in year that amount by 200,000. So last year they used 1.1 million. We also know that Rite Aid distributed about 700,000 bags. We didn't get the cooperation from QuickCheck, but we know they are a major distributor of bags.
Okay, but in relative terms, what does that actually mean?
So that means about 2,000 2 million probably plastic bags were given out in Highland Park
Okay.
over the course of the year.
Right, but I don't think you're understanding. That 2 million plastic bags are small, right? They actually amount to a very small percentage of plastic overall that's created. So if you actually want to impact the amount of plastic and things done, the plastic bags produced are not that impactful. More importantly, do you know the ecological impact of those 2 million bags?
So,
On Highland Park specific?
no. I
Okay.
think you're asking a question. No, let me answer you. I think you're asking
You
a
did, you said no.
question that you know that I don't have that information. But we know that countries all over the world
Forget
and
about countries.
cities.
We're talking
no,
about Highland Park specific.
Let
Well,
me
let me
Wait, no,
respond.
no, let me finish, okay? Let me finish my, that every drop in an ocean adds to the larger total. Every town that bans plastic bags, every country around the world that bans plastic bags, every state that bans plastic bags will add to the outcome that we are looking for, which is the reduction of microbeads in our waterways. You can say 2 million bags, what does that amount to? You know, come on, it's nothing. It's not nothing. We are responsible, we can legislate in our own locality, and that will have an impact which we are adding to the total impact of countries, towns, cities, states all around the world. And we're proud to do that.
So I appreciate that you feel this way, but practically speaking, that's incorrect.
Well,
Because
let me join in for a second before you go on.
there's a lot of if
Well,
I can
hold on.
interrupt, there's a lot
I
of
want to talk about.
there's a lot of speaking going on, and not a lot of answering
I
questions.
know, and right
specific
now,
questions.
I'd like to join in the response which you asked for, so I'll give that. Anybody who takes a walk through the native plant sanctuary, walks through the Meadows Trail, looks at the streets or has a corner lot in town, deals with the bags that brush up. If you do any of the Raritan River cleanups along the banks of the Raritan on the Highland Park side, or walk through the meadows, we pick up thousands of plastic bags floating that wash up on our littoral shores.
Where are those bags coming from?
They're coming from other towns that haven't banned them.
Okay. So what
But
your
they're a
answer
Highland
is
Park
that the Highland
problem.
Park thing, the plastic bag ban won't affect that. That's
But
what you're
what
saying.
Tina's saying is, we can
Sure.
only deal with Highland Park.
Can I just say, I'm very excited personally about what's going to happen. In my synagogue, or Torah, I've personally bought paper plates from my own money, and my kids are super excited, and they're very interested in anything environmental. And a lot of it is also just teaching your children that when they see videos on YouTube about plastic being extricated from whales, that mommy is not about to just go purchase plastic at Stop and Shop, use the Stop and Shop bags, and doesn't give a care. You're showing that you care, and yes, it's a very small gesture, but it's still showing that your heart and your mind is in the right place.
Again,
We
totally
also
agree with
have-
that.
We also have a question, thank you. Oh,
I'm sorry, I don't think I was finished. So you had a year and a $10,000 grant, right? And in that period of time, you don't have actual data on the Highland Park specific impact of Highland Park plastic bags. So what was that $10,000 spent on?
It was spent on literature, on bags, on movie license fees, on all sorts of outreach.
Was it also spent on an intern for $750?
Yes.
And was that necessary with a 12-person
It was
volunteer committee?
tremendously necessary. He saved us a tremendous amount of money by doing the logo
Yeah.
for free and developing the
I
slogan.
also
for
want to
free.
keep this conversation civil, but also on topic. So we're talking now about plastic bags in Highland Park and the ordinance that we are looking at as a possible ordinance for the municipality.
Sure.
Do you have any questions on that ordinance?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
So
let's
again,
stick to
all these
that.
questions, I thought, is part of how this ordinance was created and on what data the ordinance is being created and implemented on. Because like you mentioned,
We're not hearing you over here.
sure,
Thank you.
I'm asking questions about the data and how this ordinance was created, because how this ordinance was created has direct effects on the implications of this ordinance down the line. Now, it's super wonderful that you're promoting use of paper and things, and I think that should definitely be promoted and encouraged. The question isn't promotion or education. The question is municipal banning of things and how that will absolutely implement and affect the overall Highland Park economy. So with that in mind, you mentioned that you don't care about the Stop and Shop. Why is that? Do you know what the sales revenue taxes are from Stop and Shop relative to other businesses or in itself?
I didn't say, I said we're not as concerned about Stop and Shop
Okay.
as we are about the small businessman
In other
who
words,
has a
Okay.
covering them
small
for the
margin
expense
of
of the
profit, right?
Gotcha.
That's, Stop and Shop will do fine.
Okay.
And Stop and Shop is not objecting to this at all.
Okay.
They're very much on board.
We care very much about
Can you
Stop and
please be
Shop.
transparent and let us know if you are a merchant in Highland Park?
I'm not. I'm a resident concerned about the economic implications of this. So all around what you've been saying, I'm sorry?
How many questions do you get?
Just a couple. There should be short. I mean, there really could be short, things like that.
Well, let
So-
me just poll for a second. Does anybody else have any questions right now?
I think we're
So
all.
what
I
if-
see.
what if-
I have a question.
sorry,
I have a
I
question.
didn't
When is he
come
going to
back.
be done? That's my question.
Very
why
soon.
don't we allow you one more question so that the public discourse can take place, and then we can revisit again.
Great.
Which is always my policy at council meetings is, let's hear from everybody once, and then we can always go back again, and you may ask questions about other questions that people ask. So let's try one
Fantastic.
more, okay?
Okay. So in the year and with the $10,000 in grant money that you had, have you estimated the potential economic impact of this ban on Highland Park? Given the fact that, like the gentleman said, people will go to East Brunswick, people will go to New Brunswick, people will go to Edison to shop. And although you think that Stop and Shop will be okay, that's not necessarily true at all. Because some of the biggest revenue that they have is from large purchases. Same thing with Brighton.
Let me talk to that a little bit. First of all, when my mother-in-law was still alive, she would shudder at the thought of having to drive to East Brunswick because it would cost her more in gas. When here, she can walk to her stores with her wagon, do her shopping, and walk home. People are not necessarily going to, for 10 cents on the bag, people are not going to go over to East Brunswick and sit in that traffic. They're not going to drive to Edison where they don't have a lot of selections for some of our residents. They're going to continue to shop in Highland Park. Additionally, Main Street Highland Park had meetings with the retailers. Now, I wasn't there, you were there.
I went to one, but Councilwoman Welkowicz, who is the liaison to Main Street and Economic Development, had a number of meetings.
Right. So we are always concerned with the economic development of our downtown. That's part of the reason why Main Street Highland Park exists, so that it can work with the retailers on our Main Street, on Raritan Avenue in the bid. I don't want you to think that anything that we would consider doing would be to hurt the retailers or our economic revenue here in Highland Park. We depend on our downtown. We depend on it. And anything that we do here would take all of our businesses into consideration. We don't have huge corporations like East Brunswick, New Brunswick, Edison, Metuchen. We don't have those kinds of corporations to help with our tax base. We are all in this together. Our homeowners, the renters who pay for taxes through their rent, and our businesses in town. So of course we're going to look into that. But let me just stop for a second. There is about 5 other people who've been dying to ask questions. We'll come back to the rest of yours, but let's be fair to everybody else.
Sure.
Okay, Phil, you want to?
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to talk.
You'd like to
briefly.
speak louder than the music?
I'll speak louder than the music. I have a very loud voice. So, I would like to say that, just as a comment, I'd like to say that I very much in favor of banning plastic bags, single-use plastic bags in the town, and we need to support the merchants by kicking in 10 cents for paper, then so be it. Earlier this week, as I often do, I walked to the Stop and Shop, and I brought my nice little nylon bag that folds up and is so lightweight pocket. And it actually, this is a free one I got from Google, but you can buy these nylon type bags at the dollar store for $1, and they're virtually indestructible and they're washable. So I also had a shoulder bag with me. I bought $70 worth of groceries, including a week's worth of cat food, and I walked home with it. Okay, so, I mean, it's not, for me, this is not a big deal. In fact, and as far as the merchants and losing business, I think it's actually an incentive to shop in Highland Park because I want to support green communities and I want to support the decrease of single-use plastic.
Thank you. Any other questions?
You're concerned about the downtown. I'm concerned, another business that is here in Highland Park is Glock 27. A lot of people from Edison drive to Glock 27. The parking lot is full all the time, okay?
Not my favorite part.
Let me finish, okay? The fact is, how many people are gonna go away from Glock 27 if they have 12 bags, okay? Because they have a family of 8 or 14 bags, and they have to pay that 10 cents, even though it's going to Glock. They have to pay $1.40 more. They'll take that $1.40, which is enough gas, and they will go to ShopRite on 18, which has everything Glock 27 has. Kosher meat, kosher deli, kosher fish, fresh fish, and all the other things that Stop and Shop have, because Stop and Shop, every time I've gone in there, they don't have what I want.
Right.
So they're gonna say, instead of having to go to 2 stores, I'm gonna bypass Glock 27 and I'm gonna go to ShopRite.
Tina, can you address perhaps some of the exceptions in the ordinance that, as it stands right now?
But that is under the
No, I
exception.
think this, I don't think that speaks to the point. I think you're concerned about the,
Look, Glock 27
Yeah,
being
you
gone
know-
and never coming back.
I can't speak to that. I don't know who's gonna not come, but Harry, you can.
I'll speak to it only because I do the majority of the shopping in my family. And they have a great selection in ShopRite Kosher Experience, and I rarely go there because I don't have the extra 40 minutes that it takes to get there, find a place in the parking lot, because it ain't easy,
Right.
walk to the store, get back, and drive back. Maybe other people have a different experience, but I will continue to go to Glock 27, even with the fee, because it just is in my schedule.
I think people will just, you know, it took me a while to finally get my act together and get my canvas bags. And even now I sometimes forget, but I think eventually you make enough screw ups and you'll remember to buy a couple of canvas bags, or, you know, you'll spend $1. People buy coffee. I don't think people will go running elsewhere.
What if people don't?
I think people will.
No. So these are all assumptions, right?
Okay,
Right. So that goes back to his comment before about seatbelts, I think.
Yeah, we had another question.
Things are very different. than
Yes,
seatbelts.
ma'am?
I attended only one of the meetings that was held for local businesses. I work in a local business. And there was a lot of discussion, both pro and con. I've also mentioned this to a lot of customers coming to the store. My sense of the timing may be a little bit off, but I've said to people, this is pending, it's brewing, it's being talked about, and if you like it or you don't like it, if you have an opinion, talk to your representatives. Don't come here in 6 months and be mad at me when I can't give you a bag. Now's a good time to know about it. And I, in the last couple weeks, heard a lot of comments by local business people as well as consumers. I have some very mixed views, and I expressed them in the meeting that I attended, and I'm not the owner of the business. I'm really speaking as an individual and not as a representative of the business. And I come from a background of being a Boy Scout leader for over 10 years and teaching about environment and trying to make it part of people's person of who you are. So the environmental issues, plastic bags and beyond, are important to me. I go for walks with friends and I regularly use one of those bags to pick up bottles and garbage. I walked this morning, picked up an awful lot of candy wrappers. It's just who I am. And I'd love to see, as I said in the other meeting, more garbage cans off the avenue so that the stuff, it may be still a problem in a garbage disposal location, but at least it's not floating around the street in people's yards. But from a business perspective, it's very mixed for me. There are many ways in which the business I work in would not be exempt if you're not looking at size, if you're looking at what is sold. But when I think about that we don't officially deliver products, but I often end up dropping off for people, and if I have to leave, I work at Judaica Gallery, if I have to leave books on somebody's porch and it's a damp day, even just too humid, and I'm competing with Amazon, who can shrink wrap and bubble wrap and everything else, and if this week we started stocking the pre-filled oils for Hanukkah menorahs, and they often arrive to us sticky. I can't put them in a bag with other things. So it's not just about the fees. Sometimes you want something disposable. Washing that oil out of a canvas bag is probably awkward and difficult. So it's also about convenience. It's about, are we different than the next town? Are people going to go out of the way to come to me as opposed to order on Amazon? My concern is not Lot 27 to ShopRite from this particular perspective. My concern is, are people going to come to me from Somerset? Are people going to come to me from 2 blocks away if they can have something delivered more conveniently? It's not only about money. So really, in many ways, I'm supportive, and I know there are some exceptions being discussed, and I don't want to go into the nitty-gritty, but I think there are a lot of different perspectives that come into play on a really complicated issue. And the last thing I want to say is going back to the idea about we all have a responsibility, and sometimes a drop in a bucket. And so, yes, maybe we have to deal with bottles, and I said something in the other meeting about, well, maybe we should all carry like we have a refillable water bottle and go to the soda fountain to get your Coke and not take it home in individual cans, use something refillable. There's also something about a plastic bag ordinance. It's not just about plastic bags. It's about a mind perspective, and it's about, well, if I did this with plastic bags, maybe I could do something else a little better. I'm coming to this sort of confused and very mixed, and not black and white.
Can I just respond that as a result of that meeting, we made an exemption. I think that it'll affect your store. That any sale that involves a gift or a present or that has a presentation will be exempted. So gift bags coming out of Judaica or coming out of Over the Moon Gate or coming out of Robert's Florals, if they have, you know, pretty paper and that will be an exemption because we feel like it's part of what the customer is buying. We are also considering, and I'm not sure which way this is going to go, but it's out of the discussion that we had with merchants. We are considering those deliveries that are left on people's porches or doorknobs that would be exposed to the elements and that need a plastic bag if you're going to hang something on a doorknob or leave it on the porch. If it's going to get wet and ruined, we're not interested in that. So that is, we haven't made a decision on that, but that came to us as a result of the dialogue that we set out to have. During the year that we were doing this, it was, you need to reduce, but there was a lot of people tried, but there was no serious thought about, oh, this is going to be like an ordinance in town now. But now that it's been proposed, people are thinking of the specifics and how is this going to affect, and that's why we're having these meetings. We had a bunch of meetings with merchants. This is our second public meeting. The ordinance has been on the website for several weeks. It feels like years, sorry. For several weeks. We are trying to make this a transparent process. And I can tell you I've lived in town for about 37 years or so, right? And I think this is the most transparent process that we've had. So.
Yes, sir.
California has had banned plastic bags for years now. People got used to it. It works.
Yeah.
I'd like to add
Yeah.
to that comment. I lived in Germany in the 80s, and they charged you for a plastic bag at the grocery store. And I was shocked the first time, but not mad. And I just knew, put on my backpack and bring my reusables. I have my reusable stainless steel water bottle, my pouch. I've got a bag like you do. They fold up, can go on your keychain. I think this is an easy way to start caring for the environment. I'd like to see plastic bottles being disposed of as well, but a plastic bag, it's an easy thing, and there are ways that you can get used to it. Even my husband has bags in the trunk of his car now, because I bagged him for a really long time.
I don't even have them in the trunk of my car. I have them on the keychain because you go NPR or WQXR and they'll send you the little ones with the little clip on it, and I put them on the keychain because, otherwise, as Alan and said, and Josephine and several other people know, I have a recyclable bag. It's called a briefcase and the trial case. So for 40 years, I've been carrying around all my stuff in bags. But the mindset of running into the store, I needed to change my way. So I deliberately put this, and they have them where you bunch up, you stuff them inside the bag, and you clip them on the keychain. Yeah, I put them on my keychain.
So the other thing is that if they're good bags, if you have good bags.
Can you speak a little louder?
If they're good bags that the store is actually making money on and they would sell quality 10-cent bags, most likely they're reusable. So most likely you'll get a 2 or 3 or 5 time reuse of it, even if they're paper bags. You just go home, take your stuff out, put it back in the car.
Again, remember, the ultimate goal is not to find a replacement unit that's a little bit worse in the environment. It's to start using these. And all along with this, built into the ordinance, is a program to say, we're giving you 10 cents a bag. Why don't you, with a little impetus from us, start to advertise this more. Start to do point of retail sale distribution. Get your tellers to say, do you want a bag? Did you bring your bag? I actually thought of an idea after a really horrendous, we had a great meeting with Senator Greenstein, and after that, I was in federal court, where I was really having a bad day, to say the least. And I said, you know what? Why don't we have a design competition and see who can come into a store and buy something with the funkiest bag that we've seen in a month and give out a $100 prize. I think it's a really cool idea. I'd put the money up. But that's how you change people's mindsets. It's not just saying, well, you gotta use this bag. Paper, remember the old gig? If you're old enough, and some of us are, paper or plastic. Let's do something a little funky, a little bit different. Let's put it out there. Let's have some fun with it, for God's sake. Let's make this real. Let's do it for real if we're gonna do it. And again, we're not at that point yet. We're trying to decide. But there are lots of ways to popularize it, to make it part of your day, to make it part of your life, and get people thinking about it. Yes, baby.
I think, and I only just realized this, that part of what is confusing to me in the context of the discussions that have been having tonight and recently around the community is that there's some terms that are getting thrown around sometimes very loosely. So people are talking about a plastic bag ban and plastic bags being illegal. And then somebody else is talking about a fine on a bag. And those are actually really different things. So if it's a charge for a bag, there's an incentive to bring your own, but it also leaves open the possibility of using one if you're walking out with that container of gelled olive oil. But if there's a ban on the bag, then as either a consumer or a merchant, I'm suddenly stuck in an awkward position of maybe something that I'm having trouble dealing with. So maybe part of what would help the discussion going forward is a little more care about the language on everybody's part. When we mean ban, say ban, and when we mean incentive or fine or penalty.
Fee is the word.
Something, but people have different perspectives with those words, and I think we're throwing them all together and mixing them up, and that adds to confusion, doesn't help.
That's a good idea. We will clarify that. But just to say what it is, it's a fee for the plastic, For the
No.
first 6 months after the 2-month, get acquainted, here's what the rules are, and so on. And then after that, they're banned. There is no fine. You're not going to go to municipal court because you had a plastic bag. That's not going to happen.
Cannot just.
Yeah, but if you have
The
a
merchants
whole,
cannot distribute.
you know, closet full of plastic bags that you got and you saved from Stop and Shop, you can bring them and use them. What we're saying is the merchant cannot distribute it.
New ones.
New
No
ones.
no new ones into
But
the
you
stream
can
of
bring
commerce.
whatever kind of container you want. If it's
That's
old
right.
Stop and Shop bags, you can bring them.
As a consumer, can I play devil's advocate for just a second? And I'll stop. I reuse my bags a lot, and as long as I don't have a hole after using them for other things, they usually end up as a garbage bag in my kitchen. So if I'm not getting them as part of what I'm spending on my shopping, because I'm paying for them whether I'm charged or not, right? It goes into the cost of my groceries. Now I'm going out and I'm buying a bag from Hefty or whatever company it is, because I still need something to put my garbage in, and it becomes a single-use bag. So at some point, it would be nice if somebody on the committee would talk about that angle of the whole idea of recycling and effective use.
Eventually, we've heard that comment before, and it happens. I've heard it in a lot of other municipalities about the same issue. You know, that ultimately, you know, you purify your garbage out of everything that's bad. You only put in natural waste that decomposes, and then you put it in a plastic bag to take it to the landfill. There's a lot of comment on that. That, however, is a regional and state issue, simply because we, like most municipalities, truck waste to landfills, some of which are out of state. That's a much bigger problem. We recognize it, we understand it. I actually started looking online to see if there are recyclable bags that decompose, like lined plastic or paper bags that could be used as waste, but that's a long-term issue. I agree. Now we had another question over
Wait,
here.
Diane,
Yeah.
and Diane wanted to.
So, I'm a new retailer now. I'm a bakery, so I think.
You're the big.
We couldn't wait for you to.
It's the carpenter in the
The
chef.
cook and the carpenter. And from what I read on the ordinance, I think everything that I have is exempt. I also, when I designed my business plan, I have 8 nieces. So I know how the environment is impacting them. So I set it all up so that I'm using paper. Our moms are making our own bags. So we have bags reusable bags that people will be able to purchase. So that's, like, I'm very for this. I'm totally for this. The only thing is, in reading the ordinance, it says for one of the exceptions is for people who are receiving assistance.
Could you say that again?
People who are receiving assistance or
State
exempt.
assistance, food
Right.
stamps,
Stamp
Medicaid.
cards, yes.
Yeah.
How do I know?
Because if
Well,
it,
not just that. As a kid who grew up on welfare, the embarrassment was like super high to know anyone to know that I was on it.
Right.
So as a retailer, like, I don't really want to put people in the position of having to ask.
understood, and you know, we looked at that,
Okay.
and we did spend some time doing the research. We saw the studies that talked about that issue, and we made it very, very simple. It's the customer's responsibility. Now, it's both a state and a federal policy. It's not officially written down anywhere that you don't charge extra. And you know, the SNAP is the most general. We used to call it the food stamps. Now it's a prepaid debit, a preloaded debit card. But when they present the card for payment, is the point where the point of retail sale identifies that, and you just simply, you know, charge it.
And so since with my business plan, I already put in, like, I know what the cost of my goods for these paper bags. Do I need to charge someone 10 cents for, you know, a paper bag that they're going to take stuff back out with if I have a larger bag?
After 8 months, that it shifts from 10 cents on plastic to 10 cents.
Right, there's no plastic in the shop, so it would just be paper. So what I'm saying is, after the 8 months,
No.
Well, it's an interesting question, because this is going all the way back to when I went with my grandmother to the original Calandras in Newark to buy, you know, the real Italian bread that real Italians buy.
Yeah.
And, you know, and they're always, and to this day, sold in paper bags.
Yes.
So, you know, that's one thing we need to look at, because we have talked about products that are initially bagged in a certain way, but not wrapped such as meat you would see at Stop and Shop. So that is one thing to discuss, because you, of course, getting close to opening, have raised the question.
Right.
Because you're producing a product, you're initially bagging it, you know, for sale in paper.
Right.
So we
Right,
need to think
the
about it.
only bag will be in paper.
The
but if
only bag will be in
Someone buys
paper.
like 5 baguettes, and they need a bag for it.
And let me be clear, the way the ordinance is written
Right.
at this point, yes, if it's a carry-out bag, right, we're not talking about the paper that you might slip a baguette
Right, no,
into.
no, and I
We are
understand that
talking
part.
about the carry-out bag
Right.
that we are legislating that merchants charge 10 cents.
Do I have to
Yes.
do whatever I want with this 10 cents, is what you're saying?
You
So-
can lower your prices.
Okay.
Lower your prices, because if everybody agrees that the cost of the bag is already in the price, if you're getting an extra 10 cents per bag, and I predict that there will be less bags given out over time because people are going to bring their own bags. It will take a month, 2 months before it kind of sinks in that people are paying for bags, but my prediction is that bags in general across the town will decrease.
So you could determine what you want to do with
Yeah,
your
with it.
10 cents.
Okay, that's what I was wondering.
I think there,
Yes,
before-
we have another question, a first-time question.
My question has a few parts. The first part is, there were some questions raised about how the ordinance was written, and I can't speak personally about this, but having been involved in writing another ordinance for the town, there was a lot of volunteer input that minimized the effort that had to be put in by the professional staff. I am fully in support of trying to lower our plastic footprint in whatever way it's done. The one concern that I have as a sort of a next step is I heard a couple comments about straws. And as someone who needs to use a straw to drink anything, the disappearance of all straws is not good. But switching to paper straws is something that if the town wants to look at in the future, I think that that's very reasonable. But in terms of plastic bag, I have questions on a couple things that come into town. One is newspaper deliveries that come in from out of town. They're left on our doorstep, and in the rain, we want them in a plastic bag.
They're exempted.
But, so any deliveries from out of town are exempted.
Well, it's the newspaper bag that's exempted. I don't know whether it's from out of town or in town, but because it is subject to the elements, and that's what we're talking about with other deliveries that might be subject to the elements.
Okay. And my other question is, and this is because I know that there's a garbage can on public property further down my street that has the little, let's call them dispensers for doggy bags, for people to clean up after their dogs. And are those, they're not coming from a retail establishment. I don't know who puts them on the garbage can. Is that the borough? If it is, we don't know where they come from.
It's not the borough. So if somebody wants to be generous and buy other people those, doggy bag, plastic doggy bag things, that seems to me it's fine.
Dog whisperer.
Yeah, the dog whisperer, right? Okay.
Well, I just want to make
Yeah,
sure that
seems
this
like-
is not going to make people stop doing
No,
that.
no. And maybe you'll get more, I mean, in fact, many people have come to Sustainable Highland Park and say they have closet full of reusable bags. Can they give them to Sustainable Highland Park? So we have been talking about the idea of putting in some major stores around town a box with all sorts of reusable bags that people don't want. So if people come into the supermarket, they're from out of town, they forgot their bags, we could put one in Glot Kosher, Lot 27. And that way, they can take one, and you know, it's goodwill, and people want to share because they're very supportive. So maybe we can put some in Glot 27. That would be a sign of goodwill, right? Okay. Anybody else?
So I had a question. Is there an incentive to bring a bag? I mean, if you're getting charged 10 cents if you don't bring a bag?
That's the point. That's
In other words, you won't get charged 10 cents.
You won't get charged 10
That's your
cents.
incentive.
Are we going to give you 10 cents because you brought a bag? No. The ins-
Well, you know, social science research has done some projects on this, and in the past, I think the Stop and Shop, or maybe it was a different store at that point, they gave back 5 cents for every reusable bag, and then they stopped it. And the research points out that human beings don't care about the extra 5 cents that they might get back, but they do care if they have to spend 10 cents. It's the difference between getting something and having to pay for something, and that makes more of an impact on people, and they will remember more to bring their reusable bags.
Okay, it's close to 9 o'clock. We have one more question.
Just to address that question, Trader Joe's, if you bring your own bags, you can enter a raffle for
We did that after Trader Joe's opened. I went down there to see the store, and I saw
Yeah.
that they did a raffle. We 20 weeks we did a raffle in Stop and Shop, and people, the impact was that people were bringing more reusable bags.
Yeah, because the way it worked was you'd fill out the little sheet at the table over by customer service, and you'd put it in. And we also found that a lot of the people who actually won the raffle donated the money back. All right, everyone, it's 5 minutes to 9. Thank you all very much for your comments.
Yeah.
No questions, only
No,
a
it's not
comment.
a question. Last night, so I was thinking about this meeting, and I personally, I'm tempted to open a store that would, but I'm not going to do it because my kids are too young. But, where you could refill, let's say, your detergent or refill your shampoos. And I see in California and in New York City, there are some stores like this. And last night, I found this in San Francisco. I don't know if anyone's interested. It's called feelgood.co, where you basically, they make group deliveries, or if you have over $30, they'll deliver to your house. I don't know if anyone here is thinking of switching careers, but I could volunteer a few hours of my day. And so last night, thinking about this, I ended up deciding to email Jeff Bezos from Amazon, because I was thinking the truth is Amazon can really do this better than anyone else. They have all the vans. You would just, click that you want more detergent, and then you would leave them your old bottles, and they would give you used bottles. So I was just thinking, maybe if anyone's interested in emailing Amazon, maybe I could give you a reminder. Like, if you give me your name, I could text you in 2 weeks. It's your turn to email Amazon. That way, if all of a sudden they get once a month someone asking them, maybe they'll take it seriously. I got a response. It did say, we're going to consider it, but I'm not holding my breath unless there are more people.
Let's just close with a
Yeah.
reminder then that 60 years ago, when I was raised on my grandfather's farm, where the mall is now in South Plainfield, that the milkman used to do that.
Yes, right.
Thank you all very much for coming. I appreciate your
And
comments.
everybody take a bag or two.
Or two.